Hey guys, welcome to Whispers of Charleston. My name is Savannah, and I have a Charleston legend and a lore that I want to tell y'all tonight. So first off, I'm gonna do some light housekeeping. So please rate, share, and subscribe to the podcast. If you could hit the follow button on all social media, Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. If y'all could pretty please leave reviews and rate the show, I would appreciate it. It helps get the show out. If y'all could tell a friend, a coworker, a customer, a family member, hey, the saying, the word's the bird, man. If y'all could give me a 5-star rating, if y'all would be more than amazing than y'all already are. For those who are listening every day and every week, y'all are amazing, beautiful souls. So any sort of ratings and hitting that like button helps the podcast reach others, and then I get more listeners. So if you could please help me with that, I would appreciate it. It does really help. So that way I'm not just sitting here rambling to myself like I do at work while I'm chasing down wasp and killing them and low-key acting like Sid from Toy Stories. All right, I'm done rambling. All right, on to the story. So today we're going to talk about Hydrick Carl Ryngo, better known as Doctor to the Dead. So Hydrick Ryngo lived in Charleston in the first half of the 19th century. It is said that he would have been born sometime in Edgar Allan Poe's lifetime, and it would have died sometime around the American Civil War. There are many rumors about Hydrick, about who his parents were. The first one is that he may have been John and Lavinia Fisher's son out of wedlock, but we know that is to not be true because the Fishers did not have children. And another rumor is that he would have been adopted by the gatekeeper at the College of Charleston, but we also know that's not true because we also know what we do know. A little bit of what we know about him is that his parents were of German immigrants who moved to Charleston to open up a grocery store chain. They did very well for themselves. So Hydrick Ryngo was known to be a precocious child, and he was known to be a very smart child that had a lot of gifts. So Mr. Ryngo decided that he wanted to become an Anglican priest and went to seminary school to become a priest. So as being a young child and being that precocious child, he knew that he wanted to be a man of God at a very young age. So as soon as he could, Ryngo started seminary school and was studying under the priest, mainly the head rector at St. Philip's Church, where it said that Hydrick may have been a sociopath. But the thing was that he had feelings and empathy, but it was just a little bit different than maybe the normal person. It was a little bit misplaced. But back then they didn't really know how to, they didn't understand all of that. But see, the thing is with Mr. Ryngo was he was very hell-bent on helping those who had passed to the other side. Well, one day after one of the big hurricanes had swept through the city, well, like most storms do in the city of Charleston, it causes the waters to rise, and that's a pretty common thing for even today. Flooding is a big issue that we have here in Charleston, seeing how we're 5 feet under sea level. So Mr. Ryngo and the St. Philip's priest were walking along Church Street, and it just so happened that 2 coffins had become dislodged from the ground and started to float into the waters going down Church Street. The 2 men were wading in the water up to their knees, and when they bumped into the 2 coffins, well, to the men's disbelief, the coffins had keeled over and popped open, and the contents had spilled out at the men's feet. Well, technically their knees, but whatever. While the bodies were in full decomposition, you could still tell who these people were and what they were. But back then, when bombing wasn't a thing yet, while Hydrick rushed over to study the bodies, the preacher stayed back in full shock. Ryngo looked at the bodies and pondered, then looked at the preacher and said, "If this is the state of the dead, who can doubt their desire to rise again? And I think I can help them." And the preacher simply responded with, "My son, until the world rolls backwards to judgment, the dead will not return." So Hydrick responded with, "Well, not if I can help it." So after that, Hydrick decided to drop out of seminary school. He thought it would become a lawyer for the dead. But decided that was a dead end and became a doctor. He went to school and did very well, but while he was going to school, to become a doctor to help those who had passed on. He also started robbing graves, but not for what was left behind, like the gold, the money, the jewels, but rather the body that was left behind. And a lot of times in the 1840s and 1850s, Hydrick and many other grave robbers would go to the receiving tombs in many cemeteries, like Magnolia Cemetery, to collect the bodies. Most of the times they would steal the bodies to sell to the medical colleges like MUSC or to doctors, and a lot of these doctors would keep the skeletons or use the cadavers to have their students practice on. So Hydrick would take the bodies into his laboratory in his home on King Street. So he lived near what is now Berlin's men's store on King Street. So Mr. Ryngo was trying to find a way to raise the dead. So one night he was at the circular congregational church, and something horribly amazing happened. He came in contact with a beautiful spirit named Angelic Legare, who had died way before Mr. Ryngo was ever even born, and her body had been placed in the Hudson tomb in the back of the cemetery. So Hydrick began a discourse with the spirit. So several nights went by. He would visit his secret ghost of love. Every night, Angelique and Hydrick would wrap up in each other's arms, and he would kiss on her. And now that's all I'm going to tell you about that love romance, and y'all can put two and two together. Imagination. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to burst your eardrums. As the nights went by, they consummated their love, and as time went on, Hydrick became more and more obsessed with Angelique. Angelique would always tell Hydrick that the one thing that she could not do was remain above the ground once the sun came up, and if that ever happened, she would evaporate forever. Well, one morning, they were laying on the ground in the mausoleum. Hydrick, madly in love, decided to hold on for dear life. As the sun came up, poor Angelique struggled and squirmed, and did everything that she could to get her ghostly spirit out of his frame and his grasp. She just wanted to go home, but he wouldn't let go. As the sun hit her, she hissed and screamed, and she vanished into thin air. As Hydrick sat there, heartbroken by this, he fell down the rabbit hole of black magic, voodoo, hoodoo, and alchemy. As he went on reading black magic books to find a way to bring his love back, he came across this text that stated that every human being at the base of their spine had this thing called the ethereal bone. It was invisible to the naked eye, but not to the heart. And Hydrick read that if you can get this bone, you could do black magic on it and bring the soul back to eternal life. And he actually wrote a paper on it and presented this to the medical college, MUSC of Charleston, to his colleagues. And they laughed. They laughed at him. They chased him out the building, threw things, threw books at him, threw papers at him. So Hydrick sat there and told these people that they were crazy, that it was the dead who needed the help, not the living. The dead deserved the help from the doctors, not the living. It was the sick and the dying that were the ones that had already crossed over. So now at this point, he had no job, no career. He was left to his own imagination. While he still proceeded to steal bodies and do all those experiments in his own home, the more Ryngo did this, the more he withdrew from everyday life and from the Charleston scene. People noticed that when he did appear in public, he had an oversized black shroud on that seemed to be weighed down by cement. It seemed heavy. It seemed overly sized big for this small man. A big black round hat that covered his face, and he had a cane and gloves, and he started to walk like he had a hunch in his back. And he made sure that no one got a good look at his face. They would scurry away every time they saw him walk by. Some people would see him at the slave auction on East Bay Street, and people started to notice beautiful women arrive at his home, but never leave. And the same thing went for those beautiful slave girls. The more and more people started to get suspicious. They would talk. They would walk by his place and see him dancing with someone in the windows or on the piazza, but it almost seemed like the person that he was dancing with was motionless, maybe almost dead. And sure enough, the smell of death started to become overwhelming. People were slow to put things together in Charleston, especially back in those days. And finally, the smell became too much. Merchants had to move their tents because of it. People would cross the streets because of the smell. If someone was brave enough to knock on the door, Hydrick would answer the door in his cloak and chase them away. People began to wonder what was going on in his home. So finally, the crowd formed in front of his home to get answers, to get reasons, to ask why. They see him bolting throughout the house. As the sun began to set, the crowd grew bigger, at least 100+ strong, and they were angry. So they finally burst through the piazza, and they see Hydrick bolting through the front door, and they burst through the front door, and they see him run up the stairs. But as soon as they hit the threshold of the house, there was nothing but carnage. Bodies sprawled out everywhere. Body parts everywhere. Bodies on different tables. But what were they looking at? What was this? What was that? Bodies didn't match. Limbs, torsos, heads, female parts. They were stitched and sewed together. Almost like Frankenstein's monster. What was Hydrick trying to do? What was he doing? What was he trying to achieve? All he wanted was his sweet Angelic back. He wanted his perfect, beautiful woman back that he could hold and love. He wanted his perfect girl, his Angelic Legare. Well, it didn't work. As the crowd chased him down, they chased him up to the 3rd floor. They see him go to the 3rd floor piazza. As they bust through the door, there was Hydrick Ryngo standing on the balustrade, and there they see him take the cloak and the hat and throw it off and reveal what he had transformed into. A hideous, full-sized man, a full man-sized vulture. His nose has extended like a vulture's nose. His hands and his toes had turned into claws. He had wings. And just as the crowd went to go grab him, he extended his wings and flew off into the night sky, never to be seen again. Now, there are rumors. These rumors are that people have seen him at the west end of Folly Beach, at Bird Cay, and people have seen him flying around the Pelicans, and on occasion people see him moving through the streets of downtown, waving through the cemeteries, and scurrying from one alley to the next, still looking for the beautiful young woman to take back home to be disassembled. So, my dear friends, it's up to you to read between the fine lines of this Charleston tale. All right, my little bats, just remember, don't leave any stone unturned unless you're on King Street, near Berlin Men's Dress Store, aka Hydrick Ryngo's home. You might not want to touch that. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening to Whispers of Charleston, where the streets whisper back. But are you listening close enough to what has to be said? All right, bye, y'all.